According to the National Institute of Mental Health, much of what we understand about the area of mental health comes from research in the field of epidemiology, the scientific study of patterns of health and illness within a population. Research on psychiatric epidemiology shows that mental disorders are common throughout the United States, affecting tens of millions of people each year, and only a fraction of those affected receive treatment. Why is that? Well, today we're going to scratch the surface of the topic of mental health and hopefully answer some of those questions. Hello, and welcome to Healthy Connections. I'm Annetta Wilson, your host. Healthy Connections is a show dedicated to exploring a wide variety of topics, from prenatal care to Alzheimer's disease. And we do so with a wide variety of perspectives, from the professionals that help treat the syndromes to everyday people like you and me who may have personal experience dealing with these topics on a first-hand basis. Stay tuned for Healthy Connections. Charlotte Melton is a program administrator with the Mental Health Association of Central Florida. And I think she wants you to come away with one thing out of this show, that it's okay to get help. Charlotte, thanks for joining us.
Hi, good morning.
Your story is very unique, and we're going to get into that. But first of all, when we talk about mental health, what exactly are we talking about? Are we talking about those days where you just don't want to get out of bed in the morning, all the way to clinical depression and everything in between?
Well, I think we often, when we hear mental health, think of the illnesses and the diagnosis. Mental health is actually the goal of everyone. We want to be mentally healthy, we want to be resilient and capable of achieving our goals and living a happy life. But what we do talk about most with mental health agencies is clinical depression, mood disorders, disorganized thinking that ties into schizophrenia, all the way down to those days that are hard to get out of bed.
So what does the Mental Health Association do? Do you provide treatment, or do you send people to the appropriate places to get help?
The Mental Health Association of Central Florida provides information and referral services, so anyone in the community can call our agency and try to get more information. That then leads them to a pathway that fits their unique circumstances financially, their transportation restrictions, insurance or lack thereof. And we can help guide them to counseling, support groups, all the way up to medication or possible hospitalization if their case is severe enough.
You know, in this country, when we think of getting mental health services, there's often a stigma attached. You know, there's something wrong, I'm crazy, people are going to label me. You've been on both sides of that fence. You now help people know where to go, but you had some pretty serious issues yourself when you were a teenager. Tell us about that.
Well, I suffered greatly from depression when I was in the middle school, high school ages. I actually attempted on my life a few times. We tried to access services. Once I finally let my parents in on what was going on, they tried to get me to a psychiatrist. We went for an evaluation, and I actually, unfortunately, accessed a very poor professional who did not guide us along a path of recovery at the time, and I didn't seek services again until a crisis during college.
So how did you go from that to now working with an organization that provides help to others?
That crisis in college opened up a door for me. It allowed me to really understand that if I needed to find myself strong and learn more from what was going on, I had to get out there and do it. So I changed my major and I accessed the Mental Health Association of Central Florida for an internship, and thankfully it has grown to a position where I'm able to help over 2,000 individuals a year who call our information referral service and provide also advocates and information to those who are advocating for individuals in mental health situations in the hospitals.
Now, I'm sure there are a few people who are surprised to hear that you went through all of that, because you're still a very young person. For young people your age or younger who may be listening to you, what would you tell them right now if they're feeling like they're isolated, no one gets it, and there's no help? What would you say to them?
That your feeling is very real and overpowering, but there is help available. And as you said in the intro, it's okay to get help. You want to be a stronger, more capable individual. That's available to you. So finding out what you need, talking to someone about it, get help. You can be powerful.
So when someone finds you and they call you, what's the first thing you do?
Well, we talk to them about what they've done before. If it hasn't worked, if they need different guidance, we try to educate as well. We had a recent caller with a very young individual who didn't know what to do. Her young child, 8 years old, was hearing voices with homicidal inflections. And
when you say homicidal, what exactly was going on?
The young girl, she's 8 years old, the mother was calling and saying that her daughter was hearing voices telling her to kill her mother.
Wow.
And then herself. That's a really young age, but the problem is real. So getting assistance for that young girl, allowing her to reach her full potential, was the goal of her mother and our agency.
Is it unusual for you to find someone that young presenting with symptoms, or does it swing to the other end of the spectrum, people in 50s and up, or is there a typical caller?
There isn't a typical caller. 1 in 4 individuals in America and around the world will experience something relating to mental health. So that's all over the board with age, symptoms, and diagnosis.
How do you handle the question of what will people think of me? Will everyone think I'm losing it? Will people treat me differently because I need help? Because I would imagine it's that thing that stops most people from picking up the phone.
That is a real challenge. Unfortunately, we face a lot of stigma that act as a barrier to individuals accessing services. But when it comes down to it, would you rather live and cope with the individual's thoughts out there or lose your life to these kind of illnesses? It's a life or death question.
How did you make the decision?
My goals and my family were more important to me than staying in the darkness. And there were options, I could see them, but they felt very far away. But I had a spark in me that didn't want to quit. And even after several attempts, I found a way to power through it.
And now you're helping other people do the same thing. So what would you say to someone out there now who's kind of on the fence? They're kind of battling with themselves.
There is a light through the darkness. The other side of what seems to be a really awful, dark, and closed-in place has so many opportunities. I would not be here today had I succeeded in my attempts at a younger age, or if I had quit and just suffered within the darkness. There is a light, is what I'd like everyone to know.
Well, it looks like you're one of those bright lights, too.
Thank you.
Charlotte, thank you for taking us inside your own personal ordeal and letting us know what's available to other people.
My pleasure.
Stay with us. We're going to continue our discussion on mental health right after this. Dr. Stephen Brown and Donar Juba Johnson are joining us from Wraparound Orange to help continue our discussion on the importance of mental health. Thank you both for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Dr. Brown, you are a psychotherapist.
Yes.
And directly involved with the treatment of some of the families that come your way through Wraparound Orange. And Juba, as Dr. Donar Juba Johnson, as part of Wraparound Orange, what exactly do you do, and at what point do you get involved with families?
Sure.
My main responsibility, well, first of all, I'm the social marketing manager for Wraparound Orange. And one of the key roles that I play is really raising awareness and advocacy about children's mental health within the communities, and really helping to educate the community and debunk the stigmas that are out there about children's mental health. Wraparound Orange, it's a new philosophy, and so it's something that's not quite common. It's not quite commonly heard within our community. So my role is to also try to make sure that the community knows what Wraparound Orange is, have a better understanding of it, so that as a community we can grow to help strengthen children and families with mental health.
So you're one of the organizations that the Mental Health Association might refer someone to.
Correct.
And how do you do the work that you do? At what point, Dr. Brown, do you come into the picture?
Well, if I may just add to what Denal said, the Wraparound Orange is a federally funded program, and it's community-wide. And what it seeks to do is to, and it's under Orange County, by the way, and what it seeks to do is to change the way services are delivered to families with children suffering from mental health disorders.
What's one of the biggest changes? You said change the way services are delivered. What do you take into account that's unique to how you do it?
Well, the great thing about Wraparound Orange is prior to having families come in or become involved with Wraparound Orange, they have gone through a multitude of different agencies and organizations and basically have been hitting a stumbling block. And what Wraparound Orange strives to provide is sort of a one-door approach, where once families, we help them navigate through this door, they're able to receive all the necessary resources that they need to help better themselves through that one-door approach. And I think that's what helps to separate Wraparound Orange and the philosophy behind it from the rest.
Do you work in partnership with other entities in the community?
Absolutely. We work with a host of community-based agencies, the Department of Juvenile Justice, the Mental Health Association, Lakeside Behavioral Health. The list goes on and on. What we try to do is really make sure that we have contacts with those critical agencies that could in turn help to provide the required resources that those families need or are looking for.
You know, you used the word stigma earlier, and in some communities, one doesn't talk about issues related to mental health. So how does that impact your job, Dr. Brown, when you go in to actually work with the families? What's the toughest hurdle that you have to clear in
Well,
doing
really,
that?
it's just educating families about mental health. There's a lot of stigma attached with mental health. So like Denal said, you have to debunk the myths. But if I may jump and add one other piece.
Of course.
I work for an agency, Visionary Vanguard Group as well. We are a community partner with Wraparound Orange. And what we do is provide the cultural and linguistic training for Wraparound Orange.
Now, what does that mean, the cultural linguistic training?
Well, as you know, in Orange County, we live in a very diverse community. For example, we have a fairly large Latino population, fairly large Haitian population. We want to ensure that these services are being delivered in the language, the culture, the tradition, the values. What we learned is that this is the most effective way to deliver such services like mental health.
So you meet people where they are.
Exactly.
Where they're comfortable both culturally and with the language.
Yes.
So it's not like one broad brush, one size fits all, if I'm hearing you. When a family says, yes, come in, how do you do what you do on the psychotherapy side, the actual delivery of treatment?
Well, let Denal take that piece and then I'll jump in.
Okay.
Well, how it's basically structured is once a family comes in, we get our families through referrals. There's a variety of referrals through different agencies. Once the family comes in, we do an assessment of what areas the family are needing assistance in. Our staff is comprised of a variety of different individuals on different levels. So we pull together a team that will work directly with that family in the home or in any location of their choice. And basically what that team does is works with the family to identify what those needs that those families have are. And then we work to identify natural supports. What are some other areas in the community that we can pull in to help those families address the needs? It could be a church, it could be a neighbor, it could be another family family member. It could be a mentoring program or a mentor that that youth might have. And then the third piece of that is, again, from the clinical side, is really obviously identifying what those needs are for that child and making sure that we plug the families into the right agencies that will give them the appropriate services to help that child.
So you really take a well-rounded, how many people can we get to get this family and these children
we
where
wrap
they need
the
to
services
get.
around
You wrap
the
it
child.
around. I like it.
Absolutely.
And the key piece is prevention. Again, there's a lot of ambiguity around mental health. So we try to get in there early and educate parents about mental health, particularly in children. The symptoms may not manifest like we see in adults. You know, you might see a change in eating or sleeping, aggression, and just this profound sadness, which is beyond the age of the child. So we want to get in there. Like Denard said, sometimes the families come to us, they've already been to other resources and not quite as successful. So education is important.
For families who are watching and who might be thinking, oh, I really need this, or maybe there is somebody who can help me, what would be the first thing you would tell them? If that door is opening just a little bit right now, what would you tell them to say, walk on through the door?
If I jump in then, sure. The main thing is this, just like physical health. If you don't address it early, like say an infection, if you don't address that early, it does get worse.
Yes.
And just like mental health, if it's not taken care of early, it will get worse. Unfortunately, you know, about 50% of the American population will come down with a mental illness. People of color, in particular, do not access these services until they're deep-ended, like, for instance, in the hospital, an emergency room. So it is very important to come in. And there's a lot of embarrassment and shame that goes with mental health. I should be better than this. This should not be happening with me. Or when people view this individual, they can't see mental health. Mental health is not tangible. You break your arm, they can see it.
Right.
But mental health, you cannot see it. So that, others around that individual do not understand, particularly with children.
So the work that you do helps people get rid of the shame, the stigma, all of the stuff that goes with a diagnosis that people need to take care of their mental health. Thank you both for being here and for the great work you're doing in the community. It truly is a holistic approach. Wrap Around Orange, great name. It speaks exactly to what you do.
Thank you for
so
having
much.
us.
And we will be back right after this. Charlotte Melton is back with us, and she's joined by Bill Strickler. And they're here to discuss a new project called Free Your Mind. But first, Bill's story really hits close to home. Bill, thank you for being with us. We talked a little earlier with Charlotte about the services that the Mental Health Association provides. Your story is sad but valuable for our viewers. Your wife was diagnosed with bipolar disorder?
Bipolar I've seen some diagnosis with that, but also borderline personality disorder.
Okay, so Charlotte, we're going to go to you to kind of get a definition of what exactly is that.
Well, borderline personality disorders, there's a range of personality disorders, but that one highlights an instability in mood where someone can go from real highs to lows very quickly. I see it as someone who's on a tightrope and they're using something to keep them stable, but they can easily fall from one side to the other.
And I imagine that can be maddening for family members.
Yes.
Bill, your story is a bit unique. You didn't find out until after your wife passed away. How did all of that happen?
I was actually eating at a restaurant with a friend, and I saw my wife's counselor. And That's where I first heard the word borderline personality disorder. And my wife had been going to counseling and psychiatrist for, she told me, almost 40 years. But I never shared that, and I think part of it is she was trying to keep me from her pain.
Mm-hmm. So she never told you?
She never told me what it was. I was a word that I don't think anybody likes to call themselves, but I was ignorant of what mental health really was about, or what she was living with.
Well, as you look back now, what were some of the signs that you noticed but maybe said, I'm not sure?
Well, I was always walking on eggshells because one thing would just set her off. She would be extremely happy, and next thing, just an explosion. And the mood control really wasn't there, and that's very indicative of borderline personality disorder. And it really alienated me and her friends and her family, which is really the worst part of mental illness, is you're alienated from the people that love you and that can help you, because we all need a support group. Mm-hmm. So my wife really didn't have a support group because we were all alienated because nobody understood what was going on.
What would you say now to someone who's watching you and has the eerie feeling that they're living what you're talking about?
Best thing to do is to communicate with that person and try to understand it, and to reach out and not only for the person that has borderline to seek help, but for themselves to understand it. And there is a book out called Stop Walking on Eggshells that I wish I had known about, because it talks about borderline personality disorder, and if I had known that, it would have helped me. My wife might be here today.
Thank you for sharing that story. You know, Charlotte, when we hear stories like that, the question that comes to mind is how much of the services that you refer people to at the Mental Health Association are geared toward family members who are just as involved in living with the disorders as the person who has them?
I think a key of our referral service is to incorporate the natural supports, the friends and the family. Often in an instance where you can't force her to tell you about it or get action herself, over the age of 18, it's up to you to get your own services. Mm-hmm. So what's left for a family member who's worried, who wants to understand more, is to educate themselves and to gain their own support.
So how did you all come together with this project, Free Your Mind?
Well, about 3 years ago, I had seen so many things in the news, Amy Winehouse dying, and I'm very involved with the music business, and I've seen great people, great artists that our lives are not as enriched if they were still here. Jimmy Morrison, Jimi Hendrix,
Sure.
Kurt Cobain. And I said, well, we're all human beings, and every life has value. So I wanted to do something about it. I'd seen enough, and I wanted to try to do something so no one else would have to suffer the way my wife did.
So
I reached out to Charlotte's organization. We started putting up billboards. I'd actually written a song in the 80s called Free Your Mind, and I figured, hey, that's perfect.
Yeah.
That would fit.
And so this project is designed to help other people walk through what can be a minefield.
Yes, we want to open an understanding, help everyone out there in the community have a better idea of what's going on, the warning signs to look out for, and what's available to them. So we're trying through different avenues under the title Free Your Mind to open up that perspective, to help people better understand, and to hopefully reduce these challenges and the rates of death that come from it.
Well, I want to thank you both for being so candid about what you've gone through in this area of mental health and getting help, and what it's like for someone who loves someone who's in that position. And hopefully we have helped some people today. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We will be back right after this. As we've learned today, it's time to take the stigma of mental health and toss it out the window. Too many people are suffering and too many families are damaged. We've heard about a lot of places to get help in the Central Florida community. Now it's up to you to take the topic out of the closet and get help for your family. We want you to be around to make more healthy connections.